For years, we've heard whispers about a secret plan to remake the world, something often dismissed as a fringe theory. But what if it was never a secret? What if the plan was published for everyone to see? That's the central question we're digging into today, based on our source material.
Our source wants us to just set aside that whole idea of a hidden, shadowy plot for a moment and think about a much bolder possibility.
What if the architects of this whole global transformation just wrote it all down, put it in a book? The source we're examining today argues that's exactly what happened, turning a supposed theory into what it calls a public confession.
So, let's start our forensic audit. The source material points us to one key person and one central piece of evidence.
First up, the architect, Klaus Schwab. He's the founder of the World Economic Forum, the WEF. It's described as this private club where the world's most powerful corporate and political leaders get together to coordinate their global agenda.
And here's Exhibit A. Now get this. Just a few months into the global pandemic, back in June of 2020, Schwab publishes this book. Our source doesn't see this as just some academic analysis. No, it calls this book the published confession of the entire agenda.
Okay, so let's look at the language used in that confession. Because according to our source, the specific words Schwab chose are not an accident. They're a declaration.
This is a direct quote from the book. Right at the very start of the crisis, the message was crystal clear. The world you knew before? Yeah, that's not coming back.
So, the crucial point here, according to the source's interpretation, is that this wasn't a prediction. It was a statement of intent. The goal wasn't to fix a tragedy, but to use that tragedy to make sure the old world was gone for good.
And this brings us to what our source calls the absolute smoking gun. It hones in on this phrase, a unique window of opportunity, and argues it reframes the whole crisis as a chance for a revolution that was already planned.
Our source argues that in the language of social engineering, a crisis is the perfect unfreezing event. It's that moment of mass fear and confusion that just shatters all the old rules and makes an entire population desperate for a solution. Any solution, which makes them psychologically ready for radical changes they would never, ever accept otherwise.
And what does the source offer as proof of coordination? A marketing campaign. It points out that in the months right after Schwab's book dropped, leaders all across the West suddenly started repeating the exact same slogan, "Build Back Better." The analysis claims this was basically a centrally crafted tagline to sell the Great Reset to all of us.
So if the goal was to build back better, what was the actual blueprint? Well, our source claims the agenda, published by the WEF, rests on three core pillars designed to completely change society as we know it.
According to the source, this new world is built on three central ideas: stakeholder capitalism, the abolition of property, and the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, let's break down what the analysis says each of these really means.
First, stakeholder capitalism. Now, the public pitch sounds great, right? Corporations will serve not just their shareholders, but all stakeholders, the community, the planet. But the source's indictment is, well, it's pretty stark. It argues this is a system where unelected corporate leaders, working hand-in-hand with governments, make all the key decisions for society, effectively ending democratic accountability.
Pillar 2 is defined by maybe the most infamous line to ever come out of the WEF, from a promotional video they made back in 2016. The source we're looking at has a very clear interpretation of this vision.
So while it's often sold as this vision of a convenient sharing economy, the source argues it's something way more fundamental. The openly stated goal to end private property. A world where you don't own your house, your car, or even your tools. You just rent access to them from some massive corporation.
And that brings us to Pillar 3, the fourth industrial revolution. The source claims this is the endgame, an open agenda for transhumanism. And it points directly to Klaus Schwab's own writings, where he talks about a future with implantable microchips that can read thoughts, an internet of bodies with sensors monitoring your biological data, and even the power to edit the human genome itself. Now, a plan this ambitious needs an engine to make it all run. And the source identifies a three-part global machine designed to turn this vision into our reality.
At the very top, you have the World Economic Forum. The source positions the WEF as the ideological architects, the private central planning committee where the vision for this Great Reset is cooked up.
Next, you need the bureaucracy, and the source claims this is the role of the United Nations Agenda 2030.
It's described as the boring paperwork, the administrative code that uses the friendly language of Sustainable Development Goals to implement the WEF's vision on a global scale.
And finally, the muscle. How do you actually get giant corporations to comply? The source points to the financial world, specifically to BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager. By using ESG, environmental, social, and governance scores, BlackRock can financially reward or punish companies, basically forcing behaviors and making sure the entire corporate world falls in line with the agenda.
This brings us right back to where we started, this idea of an open conspiracy. The source wraps up with a really powerful argument about the psychology behind this whole strategy.
The source argues this is just a cynical masterpiece of manipulation. The plan is so huge, so ambitious, that our natural reaction is just to dismiss it. It seems impossible, right? Too much like a cartoon villain's plot to be real. And in that view, the agenda becomes its own disinformation, hiding in plain sight.
So, to wrap this up, the source's argument isn't that this was a secret that was uncovered. It's that this was a confession that was published. A plan announced for the whole world to see. They told you the plan. The source's final question is a simple one. Were you listening?